today I'm talking about self-development tips from school. So those things that we perhaps did in school, those rules, those regulations, those things we were told to do, how can we flip them or twist them round and use them to develop ourselves now? Now, I've had some great comments come through with some ideas from people, and I will share them as I'm going to go through. But I've thought about my learnings from school and how I can use them for self-development now. So my first one that rings true in my head was being told to pack your bags the night before. Do you remember that one? You had to pack your school bag the night before. You had to get your PE kit ready. You had to get your maths book in. You had to have your pens and your paper and all that in your bag. You had to have your packed lunch all set to go, so you were ready to go in the morning and you could start your day off well and you didn't have to think about all those things. Well, tip number one for today is pack your bags the night before. What an amazing actual life lesson and habit to get into. Getting things ready so you can just grab and go, or thinking about things in advance, put that into your planning. So if you know you're going out on a trip, get that ready and get ready for the morning so there's no running around. You start your day well, you can have a nice cup of coffee, you can sit, you can just chill, and you can have it all ready. And you can also extend this tip, I think, is to having things ready in grab bags or ready in one place. Now, I think I've talked about this before. And by the way, my life isn't that massively organised. Like I do, I'm the super organised person, but I like to have things, little tips that makes life easier. So I do a couple of things like this, and I've talked about these in other videos, but I have my list in my wheelie bag, which is my sort of packing for a week off in Spain. I have a list, it's in the wheelie bag all the time, and all I need to do is grab that list, pack my wheelie bag, and it's all there, done and ready for you. I don't really have to think about it. I do try and pack my night before if I'm going on a conference or I'm going to talk or I'm going to do whatever I do. I try and have my I call it my school bag, but my bag, the briefcase, and in that briefcase I've got my laptop and I've got a charger and things like that all set up in the bag, and they stay in that bag. And that's a hint, actually. If you go to places like you go to hotels or you go to work or whatever, or your electronics, get yourself a little bag and just pop an extra set of those electronics in your bag, and then they go back in your bag, and then it's done. So there's the first tip, first self-development tip from our school days. Pack your bag the night before. And go and actually just extending onto that one, if you pack your lunch the night before, or you have your breakfast ready, or you have your vitamin tablets ready that you just grab in the morning, do it the night before, then that will stop you, maybe buying food that you didn't want to eat, or maybe saving a little bit of money on that type of thing. If you use a coffee cup, I've got one of those recyclable coffee cups that you can make coffee at home. Don't need to go to Starbucks, Costa or other places, and just have it there. So that's pack your bags the night before. Tip number two from school for me is about making fun from small things. Come on now, you remember, don't you, those little things you did? Maybe pop them in the chat, the things you did in school that gave you a smile. Do you remember the ruler trick? Do you remember when you get your ruler? Now, I couldn't find one funny enough to show you today, but do you remember when you used to get your ruler and you used to put it in the desk? And you'd shut the desk halfway and you bang the ruler and it'd make that bang noise. Do you remember that? I'm sure you did that. I'm sure there's people now who are watching me that bang, know what I'm talking about, making that noise, and we all fell about laughing and we all thought it was funny, didn't we? Little simple thing to make you smile. What else about those little things in school that made you smile? Conkers. Whoever played conkers? The conkers, they fall down from the tree, you drill a hole for them, you tie a knot in them, and you hit conkers against another conker to break the conker. Wasn't that a bit of fun? That was fantastic. A little bit of fun, nature, fun, making fun out of nothing. Trouble is, there's always people, aren't there, those conkers people who used to do things like bake them and cover them in varnish and inject steel. I've no idea what they did. I didn't. I just played conkers and that was it. I've just thought another thing, actually, for number two, about making things fun. Who remembers green custard? Did you have green custard in school? Or did you have pink custard in school? Or the best custard in the world, chocolate custard. Do you remember that? Wow. Now, you think to yourself, that, someone made that, it's fun. Yeah, but it made it fun, didn't it? And all they did, I'm sure, well, they did in my school anyway, to make the pink custard pink, they put pink dye in it. To make the green custard green, I think they put green dye and a little bit of mint essence in it. And then to make the custard, chocolatey custard, I'm just sure they put some cocoa powder in it. But wasn't it amazing when you had pink, green, and chocolate custard? A little bit of fun. So here's a self-development tip. What can you do? Little tiny things that make things more fun. How could you make your day more fun? How could you put things in your life that make things fun? Just listen to some bright music, or go for a walk and look at nature. Play little silly games. Just make things a little bit fun. Life's too short, isn't it? Too short to be serious all the time. So let's have a bit of fun. Let's give ourselves today the permission to have fun. Number 3 then from me. Number 3. Now, do you remember this one? We had some comments on this one about walking on the left. Now, in my school, I think it was the left. Anyway, whichever one it was, you had to only walk and not run. Do not run down the corridor. You had to walk on the left, and the other side used to walk on the left as well. And that was a rule basically to make the transitions between school, one class to another class, etc., or the end of the day, start of the day, make sure it was run smoothly. Now, how many of you now, and there were people who chatted earlier on today, how many of you carry on that rule? How many of you subconsciously carry that rule when maybe you go on an escalator? Now, I think on an escalator you stand on the right, don't you? Yeah, on the tube. You stand on the right. Or do you? Yeah, on the right. Yeah, I don't go on the tube a lot. But it's about those little rules in life, those things in life which have stuck. And they are called habits. That's right. Number 3 is about habits. Those habits that you create for yourself, because it's not natural just to walk on one side. You walk everywhere, can't you? But somebody told you had to, and you carried it on, and you're still carrying it on now. It's called a habit, isn't it? That's what it is. And it just shows you how easy a habit is formed, and also how hard it is to break a habit. There's some habits that you would have had in school that you was sort of drilled into you subconsciously, and it was all around you, but you didn't realize it was happening. So what habits have you maybe brought from your childhood to now? Interesting, isn't it? And which of those habits are no longer useful? What about those thoughts and feelings which maybe become habits? So, for example, we've all heard of that term imposter syndrome. You're not good enough, maybe. Where does that come from? I have to say, I had some amazing teachers when I was at school, but I also had some really poor teachers. Now, I'm not going to name and shame them, but there was some really poor teaching, and it was about being the boss and being their ego, and it wasn't about teaching and learning, and it wasn't about that. It was about them. Now, they maybe taught me some habits and things to think about in my head that weren't good for me at that age, and have stayed in my head and become a reoccurring habit or thought. Well, number 3 about habits is about breaking them. So why don't you break some rules and some habits safely? Of course, we're not talking about driving. We're not talking about getting in anyone's way. Why don't you try something different? Why don't you walk on the other side of the street? You might have a whole new perspective. So that's number 3. Number 3 is about walking on the left. Number 4, I think, is about teaching and about teachers. And do you remember that thing where you told bring an apple for the teacher? No, I never, ever brought an apple for my teachers. But it got me thinking, what's that all about? What is bringing an apple to do with, in the self-development world? What's that about? Well, I think what that's about for me, it's about apple for appreciation. When you appreciate somebody, or you say thank you. That's a good self-development tip. We all know it, don't we? Bringing an apple to someone. So let's maybe bring an apple. If you want to give an apple out to people, fantastic. But how could you thank someone and show your gratitude? Now, it could be a little present, it could be a sticky note, it could be just thank you for. And often we don't name what we're saying thank you for. We don't say thank you for doing this, or, I really appreciate that you did that. And sometimes structuring your appreciation and your thanks in that type of language really helps it stick in and ground that into people's minds and thoughts. So number 4, the self-development tip from school for number 4 for me is show your appreciation. Who are you going to bring that apple to? Now, if I am going to name a teacher, I'm going to name a teacher from a long time ago. Her name was Mrs. Waldron. And Mrs. Waldron was the teacher that really inspired me to read. And I wasn't a particularly strong reader. In fact, I was a very poor reader when I was younger. And she really sort of developed me in my skills. And the first book I ever read was Lord of the Flies. Now, you might know about Lord of the Flies, William Golding. I've read it now several times. But Mrs. Waldron, and I can picture her now, we read that as one of our O-level, that just shows you how old I am, O-level texts, and she brought that book alive, and she helped me at my pace. She didn't make me rush it. We had time and discussed each other, sort of the storylines and each of the chapters. It brought the book alive. And I have to thank Mrs. Waldron. If she was here now, I would give her my apple. In fact, I actually did thank her. I produced and directed Lord of the Flies, which was made into a play, and I directed it, and it was great. It was a real success, and I actually thanked Mrs. Waldron in the program. So if she's watching, you never know, Mrs. Waldron, thank you. Here's your apple. Really appreciate you. And moving then to number 5 of messages from school. Number 5 from me number 5 was about backing your books. What? What was that all about? Do you remember? You had your exercise book, your maths book, your English book, your geography book, your French book. Didn't do too well in French, I have to say. And what you did in my school, you backed them. So if you were posh, you went and bought like the sticky back plastic stuff, which I could never do, and it was a big mess. If you weren't so posh, you used a magazine. If you weren't bothered, you just didn't back them. But what was that all about? Well, that got me thinking. It got me thinking about, what is that all about? What is that all about, backing your books? What is that all about? And I think what it's about is keeping the important things to you, safe, or to keeping them top notch, or making them last long, and making them, be more than they are. So, self-development number 5 for me is about what's important to you. What's important in your life that you would take the time to back? And who could you back? I just thought that. See what I did there? That was good. Who could you back? Who in your life is important that you would back? Or what is important in your life that you would look after? And maybe this is about sustainability as well, isn't it? making things last longer. We do live in a disposable world, don't we? We throw things away, and even sometimes we throw it away and we can't recycle it, or we don't choose to recycle it, because recycling is a choice, isn't it, for all of us? We don't choose to separate our plastic from our food products, or our putting our bottles or in the recyclables or whatever. So maybe this one, number 5, about backing your books, is about what's important to you. So recycling is becoming more and more important for me, and I'm trying my best to recycle as much as I can. Buying a smaller waste bin, for example, so we don't waste, only buying the things that we need. Also, trying to buy I'm into wonky vegetables. Who else is into wonky vegetables? Basically, vegetables that are wonky, but the supermarkets don't sell them because they're not pristine. But a carrot's a carrot, isn't it? Whatever shape a carrot is. Why don't you go and find out where your wonky vegetable store is and go and buy wonky veg? Anyway, I'm going off the track, aren't I? Number 5 was all about what's important to you, backing your books. What are you going to back? What are you going to look after? And maybe who are you going to back? So a lot there from self-development tips from school. So my ones quickly were, pack your bags the night before, be prepared, get ready. Number 2 was making the fun things, the small things fun. Number 3, walking on the left, house habits. Sometimes habits are there for changing and trying to do different things. Who is going to be your apple of appreciation? Who are you going to appreciate today by giving them a metaphorical apple? And the last one for me was about backing your books. What's important to you? How are you going to keep it important? How are you going to keep it there for you? How are you going to keep it, make it sustainable? And who could you back? Who could you pat on the back and say, well done? Who could you sponsor? Who could you give some wonderful, amazing advice? Maybe some of the things I've been talking about, why don't you go and share them with people? It's always great to share, isn't it? It's always great to share.